Before we get started, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like this video. That way, you'll always stay connected to our stories and never miss the next adventure. The thing about space travel that nobody tells you in the recruitment brochures is how mind-numbingly boring it gets between the moments of absolute terror. Lieutenant Lily had been an engineer aboard the Meridian's Edge for 3 rotations now, and she'd learned to appreciate the boring parts. The boring parts meant the engines were running, the hull wasn't leaking, and nobody was screaming through the comm system about imminent catastrophic failure. The boring parts also meant she could focus on the truly important things in life, like coffee. It was 0600 hours ship time, and Lily shuffled into the galley looking like she'd been personally assaulted by the engine room because, well, she had been. 18 hours of continuous work, replacing blown conduits in the aft power distribution system. Grease streaked across her left cheek. Her coveralls were 3 shades darker than regulation gray, and her hair had given up any pretense of staying in its bun somewhere around hour 12. But none of that mattered, because waiting for her in the corner of the galley, humming its beautiful mechanical song, was her coffee maker. Not the standard-issue protein synthesizer that produced something technically classified as coffee, but tasted like someone had filtered it through a recycled air filter. No, this was a genuine vintage Earth model, circa 2089, that she'd personally restored, modified, and maintained with the kind of loving care most people reserved for children or exotic pets. The galley was empty, thank the stars. Lily liked it this way. Morning coffee was a sacred ritual, not a social event. She moved through the familiar motions with the precision of someone who'd done this exact sequence 1,000 times. Fill the reservoir with filtered water, exactly 295 milliliters. Grind the beans, the good stuff from her personal stash, 38 seconds of grinding, no more, no less. Load the filter, pack it down just right, initiate the brewing cycle. The machine hissed and gurgled, and the smell, oh, that smell, began filling the small galley. Rich, dark, with hints of chocolate and something almost smoky. This was why she worked double shifts. This was why she crawled through Jeffrey tubes and burned her hands on plasma conduits. This was civilization in a cup. 3 minutes. That's how long the perfect brew took. Lily knew this the way some people knew their own heartbeat. She turned away from the machine, just for a moment, to grab the sweetener from the storage cabinet. 5 seconds, maybe 6. That's all it took. The sound reached her first. A wet slurping noise, followed by what could only be described as enthusiastic licking, followed by a high-pitched chirp that made her blood run cold. Lily spun around. Her coffee mug, the one that had been sitting under the dispenser catching liquid gold, was now on its side, empty. And standing around it, like criminals at a crime scene, were 3 of the most adorable catastrophes she'd ever seen. The Nith-Al cubs. Oh, right, the cubs. In her caffeine-deprived state, Lily had completely forgotten that 2 days ago the Meridian's Edge had picked up emergency cargo. 3 juvenile Nith-Al being transported to a conservation station after their habitat had been destroyed by corporate mining operations. Apex predators from the outer colonies, all 6 legs and crystalline eyes and fur that seemed to absorb light. Beautiful creatures, endangered, precious, and currently vibrating. The smallest cub, its face entirely inside her mug, was making a noise like a malfunctioning servo motor. The middle one had its tongue extended to an anatomically improbable length, licking coffee droplets off the counter with single-minded determination. The largest was already showing signs of what Lily's exhausted brain could only classify as impending chaos. Pupils dilated to the size of reactor cores, every muscle trembling with barely contained energy. For a long moment, nobody moved. The cubs stared at Lily. Lily stared at the cubs. The coffee maker beeped cheerfully, completely unaware of the tragedy that had just occurred. Then the largest cub chirped, a sound that started low and went supersonic, and promptly ricocheted off 3 walls before landing on top of the protein synthesizer. "No," Lily said quietly, her voice carrying the kind of calm that precedes a supernova. "No, no, 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 no." The smallest cub finally extracted its face from her mug, looked at her with coffee-stained whiskers, and made a sound that in any other context would have been adorable. In this context, with Lily's precious coffee coating its fur and her sanity hanging by a thread, it sounded like a declaration of war. "Archon," Lily said, still in that terrifyingly calm voice. "Where is Pip Nash?" The ship's AI responded immediately, its voice carrying just a hint of electronic amusement. "The Olmiri handler is currently in Cargo Bay 2, attempting to repair the crate the cubs escaped from. Again. This marks the 5th escape in as many days. Fantastic. Wonderful. Absolutely perfect." The middle cub had finished licking the counter and was now eyeing Lily's coveralls with obvious interest. Specifically, the pockets where she kept her tools. And sometimes, snacks. "Archon, what happens when you give caffeine to a Nithal?" There was a pause, which in AI terms meant the computer was either accessing databases or trying to figure out how to deliver bad news diplomatically. "There is limited research on the interaction between Earth-based stimulants and Nithal physiology," Archon said finally. "However, based on their metabolic rate and neurological structure, I would estimate—" The largest cub completed a vertical leap that took it from the synthesizer to the ceiling panel, where it clung for a moment before dropping onto Lily's shoulders. "Increased energy output by a factor of approximately 5 to 8, Archon finished. "Also, they appear to like you." The cub on her shoulders was purring and vibrating and kneading its claws against her coveralls in a way that would have been endearing if Lily wasn't currently calculating exactly how much of her coffee had been distributed among 3 juvenile apex predators. "How much coffee was in that mug?" Archon asked, which was a question Lily really didn't want to answer. "Enough," she said grimly. "Enough for—" Enough. The smallest cub chose that moment to launch itself at the middle cub, and suddenly the galley was a chaos of fur and chirping, and the sound of small predators discovering that caffeine made everything more. More fun, more energy, more speed, more everything. Lily stood in the center of the maelstrom, a cub still perched on her shoulders, and watched as the other 2 began scaling the walls. Literally. Their claws found purchase on the metal panels, and they climbed with the kind of manic energy that suggested they'd forgotten what gravity was and didn't care to remember. "Archon, alert Captain Tylon. Tell him we have a situation." "What kind of situation should I report, Lieutenant?" Lily watched as one cub discovered the ventilation grate, realized it could be opened, and promptly vanished into the ship's ductwork. The other followed immediately after, their excited chirping echoing through the vents like the world's most enthusiastic haunted house. The cub on her shoulders nuzzled against her neck, purring so hard she could feel it in her teeth. "Tell him," Lily said slowly, "that the predator cubs have achieved consciousness through the power of caffeine, and they've decided to adopt me as their new god." Should I phrase it exactly that way? Word for word, Archon, word for word. From somewhere in the ventilation system came a crash, followed by more chirping, followed by what sounded suspiciously like the emergency beacon activation alert. Lily closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and tried to remember why she'd ever thought working on a cargo vessel would be relaxing. The cub on her shoulders licked her ear. "I'm going to need more coffee," she muttered, heading back to the machine. So much more coffee. Behind her, Archon's voice carried through the ship's comm system. "Captain Tylon, please report to the galley. We have what Lieutenant Lilly describes as a consciousness-achieving, caffeine-powered adoption situation." Her words, sir, not mine. The captain's response was immediate and deeply confused. "What in the name of Archon? Is that the emergency beacon? Why is the emergency beacon active?" "The Cubs have apparently accessed the vent system and are now in navigation. They seem to be walking across the control panels." "Walking across the... Get them out of navigation!" Lily poured herself a fresh cup of coffee, this time keeping it in a death grip with both hands. The cub on her shoulders watched the steaming liquid with intense interest, and she could practically hear its tiny, caffeinated brain calculating the physics of another theft. "Don't even think about it," she warned. The cub chirped innocently. From navigation came Captain Tylon's voice, loud and slightly panicked. "Why are there predator cubs on my bridge? Why are they glowing? Are they supposed to glow?" Lily sipped her coffee, finally, and felt the caffeine hit her system like a blessing from the universe. Whatever chaos was about to unfold, at least she'd be awake for it. The cub purred louder, and somewhere in the distance, something else crashed. It was going to be a very long day. The thing about apex predators, Lily reflected as she sprinted down Corridor C with a coffee cup in one hand and a diagnostic scanner in the other, is that evolution had designed them to be efficient killing machines. Fast, smart, coordinated hunters capable of taking down prey twice their size. Evolution had not prepared them for caffeine. "Archon, status report," she barked, dodging as something small and furry shot past her at what had to be at least 40 kilometers per hour. "The Cubs have now visited 17 distinct sections of the ship in the past 23 minutes, the AI replied, with what Lily was certain was amusement. "Current locations: one in the zero-gravity cargo bay, one attempting to befriend Lieutenant Navarro in medical, and one—" Archon paused. "One is currently matching pace with you, approximately 3 meters behind and closing." Lily glanced over her shoulder. Sure enough, the largest cub was bounding after her with single-minded determination, its crystalline eyes fixed on her with an expression that clearly communicated, "You smell like coffee, and I have decided you are my favorite person in the entire universe." "Why me?" Lily muttered. "Why is it always me?" "You did provide them with their first experience of Earth-based stimulants," Archon pointed out helpfully. "They may have imprinted on you as a food source." "I'm not a food source. I'm an engineer." The cubs appear to disagree with that assessment. The cub caught up to her, not because Lily had stopped running, but because it had apparently discovered it could run on the walls. It scampered along the corridor's vertical surface, keeping perfect pace with her, chirping excitedly. Lily rounded the corner toward the engine room and nearly collided with Pip Nash, the Olmiri handler, who was hovering in the corridor, looking like someone who'd spent the last hour questioning every life choice that had led to this moment. Olmiri were tall, willowy beings with 3 jointed limbs and skin that shifted colors based on their emotional state. Right now, Pip Nash was cycling through shades of purple and orange that Lily's translation database helpfully labeled as extreme anxiety mixed with mortification. "Lieutenant Lilly," Pip Nash said in their musical voice, which currently carried harmonics of pure distress. "I must apologize. I must apologize so profoundly. I have failed in my duties. I have brought shame upon my species." I have Pipnash. Where are the other two cubs? One is in the cargo bay attempting to achieve flight, which should be impossible given their physiology, but they appear to have decided physics is merely a suggestion. The other has somehow accessed the galley's protein synthesizer and is currently trying to recreate the substance you call coffee. Lily's eye twitched. They're trying to brew coffee. They are failing spectacularly, but with great enthusiasm. From somewhere above them came a series of metallic clangs, followed by Captain Tylon's voice over the comm system, strained and clearly at the end of his patience. All crew, be advised. The predator cubs are not, I repeat, not to be given any additional stimulants. Also, navigation is temporarily offline because something small and energetic walked across the helm controls, and we are now traveling at 38 degrees off our plotted course. 38 degrees? Lily stopped in her tracks. That's going to add 2 days to our route. I am aware, Lieutenant, Tylon replied, his usual calm completely eroded. I am also aware that one of the cubs has somehow activated systems that haven't functioned in 6 months. Environmental controls just reported that Deck 3's atmosphere recycler is working at peak efficiency for the first time since I took command of this ship. That made Lily pause. Archon, confirm that. Confirmed. Additionally, the starboard maneuvering thruster, which has been operating at 62% capacity, is now functioning at 98%. I am detecting unusual energy readings throughout the ship. Lily's engineer brain, the part that wasn't busy tracking caffeinated predators, started working on this new information. What kind of energy readings? Bioelectric. The Nithal cubs generate a natural electromagnetic field as part of their hunting adaptations. It appears that in their current hyperactive state, that field has amplified significantly. The cub that had been following Lily chose that moment to leap from the wall and land directly on her shoulders again, nearly making her spill her coffee. It vibrated with energy, purring so hard that she could feel it in her bones, and started grooming her hair with its rough tongue. They're also extremely affectionate right now, Pipnash observed, their skin shifting to a slightly less distressed shade of purple. This is unusual behavior for Nithal. Typically, they maintain distance from beings outside their pack structure. Great. Wonderful. I've been adopted by hyperactive apex predators. Lily reached up to steady the cub on her shoulders and felt the static electricity crackling through its fur. Archon, are you saying these cubs are essentially walking batteries right now? That would be an accurate if simplified assessment. Their bioelectric output has increased by approximately 400%. An alarm started blaring, the kind that made everyone's blood pressure spike, the proximity alert. Captain Tylon's voice came through the comm again, but this time with a different quality. Not frustrated. Focused. All hands, we have a situation. Archon, display on all screens. The nearest wall panel flickered to life, showing the ship's external sensors. There, rendered in the cool blue of the tactical display, were 2 vessels. One was small, clearly civilian, venting atmosphere from multiple hull breaches and broadcasting a distress signal. The other was larger, predatory in design, with weapon ports that were still glowing with recent discharge. That's a medical transport, Lily said quietly, recognizing the configuration. And that's the Crimson Tooth, Captain Tylon finished grimly. Pirate vessel. They've attacked the medical ship, and they're still in the area. Through the comm system, Lily could hear the bridge crew murmuring, the sound of a team that knew they were looking at a situation that could go very wrong very quickly. The Meridian's Edge was a cargo hauler, heavy, slow, with minimal defensive capabilities. They ran scheduled routes through well-patrolled space specifically to avoid situations like this. The ship could take a hit, sure, but in a fight with a dedicated raider vessel, they'd last about as long as ice cream in a plasma conduit. "Captain," came Lieutenant Navarro's voice from medical, "I'm reading 60-plus life signs on that transport. They need immediate evacuation." "I'm aware of what they need," Tylon replied, his voice tight. "I'm calculating what we can actually do." Lily looked at the display, her engineer's mind running through the math. The medical transport was too far away to reach before it suffered catastrophic failure. The Crimson Tooth was positioned between them and the damaged vessel. Even if they tried to run, even if they ignored the distress call, and Lily knew Tylon would never do that, it wasn't in his nature. The raiders would catch them before they could jump to FTL. The cub on her shoulders chirped, and Lily felt it. That strange electric sensation, like touching a live wire, but not painful, just energizing. "Archon," she said slowly, an absolutely insane idea forming in her mind. "What's our current power output?" "Overall ship systems are operating at 115% of standard capacity. And if we had, hypothetically, 3 highly caffeinated bioelectric apex predators positioned near the main reactor?" There was a pause. In AI terms, it was the equivalent of a human taking a very deep breath before saying something inadvisable. "Theoretically," Archon said carefully, "if the Cub's bioelectric fields could be synchronized with the ship's power distribution system, and if their current energy output remains stable, and if we could somehow channel that energy efficiently, we might see a significant boost to ship performance." How significant? Impossible to calculate precisely without empirical testing, but, based on current readings, I estimate we could potentially increase overall ship energy output to somewhere between 150 and 200%. From the bridge, Captain Tylon's voice cut in, sharp and immediate. "Lieutenant Lily, are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting?" Lily looked at the tactical display, at the dying medical transport, at the pirate ship that had attacked civilians, at the impossible distance they'd need to cover, and the impossible fight they'd need to win or avoid, and the impossible odds stacked against a cargo hauler with delusions of heroism. Then she looked at the cub on her shoulders, still vibrating with caffeine-powered energy, still purring like a plasma engine, still very much convinced that Lily was the most important person in its young life. "Captain," Lily said, her voice steady despite the absolutely unhinged nature of what she was about to propose, "I'm saying we're currently flying a cargo ship that's been accidentally converted into a caffeinated apex predator generator. I'm saying those Cubs have somehow improved system efficiency across the entire vessel. And I'm saying that if we're going to do something stupid anyway, and we both know you're not going to leave those people to die, we might as well do it with every possible advantage." Another pause. She could picture Tylon on the bridge, weighing the options, calculating the risks, knowing that every second of delay meant people dying on that transport. "Archon," the captain said finally, "what's our current best speed to reach the medical transport?" "At current velocity, 18 minutes. The transport will suffer complete structural failure in approximately 12 minutes. And if we had this theoretical power boost Lieutenant Lily is proposing? If we achieved 180% output, we could reach the transport in 9 minutes, execute evacuation procedures, and have a reasonable chance of evading the Crimson Tooth." "Reasonable chance," Tylon repeated flatly. "I am an AI, Captain. I deal in probabilities, not miracles." The cub on Lily's shoulders chirped again, and from somewhere in the ventilation system the other 2 cubs responded, their calls echoing through the ship like a strange, harmonious song. "Lieutenant Lily," Captain Tylon said. "Get those cubs to the reactor room. And if this works, I'm putting you in for either a commendation or a psychiatric evaluation. Possibly both." Lily was already moving, the cub gripping her shoulders as she broke into a run. "Pipnash, I need you to round up the other 2 cubs. Tell them—" She paused. "Tell them I have more coffee smell." "You want me to lie to apex predators?" "I want you to be creative with the truth, because we have approximately 10 minutes to save 60 people, and I'm all out of conventional ideas." Pipnash's skin flashed through several colors that Lily's database translated as roughly equivalent to "This is the worst day of my life," but also somehow exciting, and took off in the opposite direction, moving with surprising speed for someone having a continuous existential crisis. Lily reached the reactor room, palmed the access panel, and stepped into the heart of the ship. The main reactor hummed in its containment field, a beautiful piece of engineering that she'd personally calibrated 100 times. She knew every quirk, every variance, every harmonic frequency of this machine. She'd never tried to turn it into an amplification system for caffeinated predator cubs. "Archon, I'm going to need you to walk me through some very experimental power routing." "Lieutenant, I feel obligated to point out that what you're proposing has never been tested and could result in catastrophic system failure." "Yes, but here's the thing." Lily set her coffee cup down on a console, carefully, reverently. "I'm an engineer on a cargo ship that's about to pick a fight with pirates to save a bunch of strangers. Catastrophic system failure is basically my baseline at this point." The cub on her shoulders purred its agreement, and somewhere in the distance, Lily heard Pipnash's musical voice calling to the other cubs, promising things that were technically true, but deeply misleading. It was absolutely going to work. Or it was going to fail spectacularly. Either way, Lily thought, as she started rerouting power conduits with one hand while holding a diagnostic scanner with the other, it wasn't going to be boring. The first cub arrived in the reactor room like a small furry missile, shooting through the access door with Pipnash tumbling behind it, their skin flashing colors that Lily's exhausted brain interpreted as, "I tried. I really tried. But these creatures are unstoppable forces of nature." The cub, the middle-sized one with the coffee-stained whiskers, took one look at Lily, chirped with what could only be described as pure joy, and launched itself at her. She caught it on instinct, which was a mistake, because now she had a vibrating apex predator in her arms and another one still perched on her shoulders, and her hands were decidedly not free for the delicate work of rewiring a reactor core. "Pipnash, I need you to hold this one." The old Miri handler's skin went pale lavender, which the database translated as something between terror and resignation. "Lieutenant, I have tried to hold them. Holding them is like attempting to contain a lightning strike using only wishful thinking." "Great metaphor. Very poetic. Please, hold the cub." The smallest cub arrived next, this one taking a more scenic route by running along the ceiling before dropping directly onto the main console. It landed with surprising grace, looked at all the blinking lights and displays, and immediately started pawing at the touchscreen controls with obvious fascination. "Archon, lock out manual controls on that console before—" Too late. The cub's paw connected with something, and suddenly the reactor's cooling. System shifted from standard operation to maximum output, dropping the ambient temperature in the room by 10 degrees in as many seconds. "Before that happens," Lily finished, her breath now visible in the sudden chill. "Perfect. This is perfect. Everything is going according to absolutely no plan whatsoever. Lieutenant, Captain Tylon's voice cut through the calm. The Crimson Tooth has detected us. They're moving to intercept. Whatever you're doing down there, do it faster. Lily looked at the three cubs. One was in Pip Nash's trembling arms, vibrating like an overclocked servo. One was still on her shoulders, grooming her hair with increasing enthusiasm. One was now attempting to climb inside the reactor housing's transparent inspection panel, apparently fascinated by the glowing power core. They were chaotic, unpredictable, and absolutely full of energy that was making Lily's hair stand on end with static electricity. Arshan, I need a synchronization protocol, something that can match the Cub's bioelectric frequency to the reactor's output rhythm. Creating such a protocol in real time would require approximately 2 hours of calculation and testing. You have 5 minutes. That is not how physics works, Lieutenant. Physics also doesn't account for caffeinated apex predators accidentally improving our systems. But here we are, living in a universe that stopped making sense somewhere around the second cup of coffee these cubs ingested. The ship lurched suddenly, a motion that sent the smallest cub tumbling from the console. Lily caught it reflexively, which meant she was now holding one cub while another clung to her shoulders, and a third was still in Pip Nash's arms, and the reactor room had become something like the universe's least organized daycare facility. "Captain?" Lily called. "The raiders fired a warning shot across our bow," Tylon replied, his voice carrying that special kind of calm that came from years of military service. "They're demanding we cut engines and prepare to be boarded. Tell them we're considering their offer and need a minute to discuss it among ourselves." "They're pirates, Lieutenant, not a committee. We don't have a minute." Lily set the cub down gently, then turned to face the reactor with all three cubs now circling her legs like fuzzy, electrically charged satellites. She'd spent 3 rotations maintaining this beast of a machine. She knew its rhythms, its quirks, its moods. The reactor was old, like everything else on the Meridian's edge, but it was reliable. She'd just never asked it to do anything like this. "All right, Archon, forget the perfect protocol. Give me something that won't blow us all into subatomic particles." That is an exceptionally low bar for success. It's the bar we're working with. Cubs. Lily knelt down, looking at the 3 predators who were now watching her with crystalline eyes that seemed far too intelligent. "I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" The Yue, largest cub, chirped and headbutted her hand. The middle one purred. The smallest one tried to climb into her lap. "I'm going to take that as a yes." Lily started pulling access panels, exposing the power distribution nodes that ran from the reactor to the rest of the ship. Normally, these were shielded, insulated, completely protected from outside interference. Now, she was deliberately creating access points, building a circuit that would allow the Cub's bioelectric fields to interface with the ship's systems. It was the kind of modification that would make any safety inspector have a complete breakdown. It violated about 40 different protocols. It was dangerous, untested, and absolutely insane. It was also, Lily reflected, as another warning shot rocked the ship, their only option. "Pip Nash, I need you to position one cub near each of these nodes. Keep them calm. Keep them close to the panels. And for the love of all that's stable in this universe, don't let them wander off." How am I supposed to keep them from wandering? They do not understand commands. They do not understand consequences. They understand only chaos and coffee. Then tell them I'll make more coffee if they cooperate. That is a lie. That is an incentive structure. Work with me here. The ship lurched again, harder this time, and Lily heard the reactor's output spike in response, the containment field adjusting automatically to compensate for the impact. They were running out of time. She positioned the first cub near the primary distribution node, and the moment it got close, the panel's readings jumped. Energy output increased, harmonics stabilized, and several warning lights that had been flickering for weeks suddenly went solid green. Archon, are you seeing this? Yes. The cub's bioelectric field is interfacing with the power grid. It's not just adding energy, it's optimizing the flow. This shouldn't be possible. Add it to the list of things that shouldn't be possible today. Lily positioned the second cub near another node, then the third near the reactor's main output regulator. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The reactor's hum changed pitch, rising from its usual steady thrum to something higher, more energetic. The lights in the room brightened. The temperature, which had dropped when the smallest cub had accidentally activated maximum cooling, started climbing again as the system found a new equilibrium. Power output now at 140% and climbing, Archon reported. 150, 160. On Lily's shoulders, the largest cub began to purr, and the vibration seemed to synchronize with the reactor's new rhythm. The other two cubs followed suit, and suddenly the reactor room was filled with the sound of purring predators and humming machinery, creating an odd harmony that shouldn't have worked, but somehow did. Lieutenant Lily, Captain Tylon's voice carried a note of awe. I don't know what you're doing, but my helm just became responsive in ways I didn't know this ship was capable of. Archon is reporting. 180% power output, the AI interrupted. All systems operating within acceptable parameters. This is remarkable. This is unprecedented. This is... The ship's emergency lighting flashed red as the Crimson Tooth fired again. But this time, it wasn't a warning shot. Lily felt the impact through the deck plates, heard the automated damage control systems activate. Direct hit to the port cargo bay, Archon reported. Minor hull damage. They're targeting our engines next. Captain, Lily called, her hands flying across the reactor controls. We're as ready as we're going to get. Power output is stable at 180%. If you're going to do something miraculous, now would be the time. Hold on to something, everyone. The Meridian's Edge, ancient cargo hauler that it was, had never been designed for combat maneuvers. It had been built for steady, reliable travel through safe lanes, carrying containers from point A to point B without fuss or drama. Its engines were meant for persistence, not performance. Its hull was reinforced for cargo capacity, not agility. None of that mattered anymore. The ship moved, not lumbered, not slowly accelerated, moved, like someone had suddenly remembered it was capable of speed and decided to make up for years of sluggish travel all at once. Lily felt the acceleration push her against the console, felt the cubs purring intensify as their bioelectric field surged with the ship's systems. Power output at 190%, Archon announced, and for the first time since Lily had known the AI, it actually sounded excited. Captain, the raiders are attempting to pursue, but we are outpacing them, significantly. Through the reactor room's small viewport, Lily watched the stars blur slightly as the Meridian's Edge executed a turn that should have taken 3 times as long. They were moving like an interceptor, like a military vessel, like something that remembered it had been built with pride and was determined to prove it could still be magnificent. The cubs purred louder, their crystalline eyes reflecting the reactor's glow, and Lily could swear they understood exactly what they were doing. They weren't just batteries or power sources. They were part of the ship now, part of its heart, helping it achieve something impossible. Medical transport in visual range, Tylon reported. Lily, we're going in. Keep that reactor stable. It's as stable as it's going to get with 3 caffeinated apex predators acting as living power conduits, Lily replied, her hands never leaving the controls. But we're holding. Go save those people, Captain. The ship's tractor beam activated, a system that normally required them to be nearly stationary to function properly. Now it locked onto the damaged medical transport while they were still moving, pulling the smaller vessel into a protective embrace. Power output at 200%, Archon announced. We are officially operating at twice our designed capacity. This should not be sustainable. The cubs purred in perfect synchronization. Tell that to them, Lily said, smiling despite everything. The evacuation took 43 minutes. 43 minutes of the Meridian's Edge holding station, while the Crimson Tooth circled like a predator that had suddenly realized its prey had grown teeth. 43 minutes of Captain Tylon coordinating the transfer of 63 patients, most of them critical, from a dying medical transport into their cargo bays. 43 minutes of Lily standing in the reactor room, watching power levels that shouldn't exist, with 3 purring cubs keeping their ship running at exactly 200% capacity. The pirates tried twice to close distance. Both times, the Meridian's Edge simply accelerated away with an ease that made the raider vessel's pursuit look embarrassed. They're breaking off, Lieutenant Navarro reported from the bridge, relief obvious in her voice. The Crimson Tooth is retreating. I think we confused them more than we hurt them. Good, Captain Tylon replied. Let them be confused. Archon, set course for the nearest medical station. Best possible speed. Calculating route now. At current power levels, we can reach Station Mendel in 6 hours, rather than the usual 14. Lily watched the reactor's readings begin to shift. The cub's purring had changed pitch, gone from that intense, synchronized thrum to something softer, slower. The smallest one yawned, showing rows of tiny sharp teeth, and its bioelectric output dropped noticeably. Archon, are they? The cub's energy levels are declining rapidly. The caffeine appears to be metabolizing. Power output now at 190%, 180, 160. The middle cub sat down heavily next to its distribution node, swaying slightly. The largest one, still near the main regulator, was blinking slowly, its crystalline eyes losing focus. They're crashing, Pipnash observed, their skin shifting to a soft blue that indicated relief mixed with exhaustion. Nithal metabolisms are extremely efficient. They burn through stimulants quickly. Lily moved carefully between the cubs, checking readings, making sure the power decrease was gradual and controlled. 140%. 120. The reactor settled back toward normal operations with surprising grace, the cubs having somehow cleared out inefficiencies that Lily hadn't even known existed. 100%, Archon announced. We have returned to standard operating parameters. However, I am detecting numerous system improvements. The atmospheric recycler on Deck 3 is still functioning at peak efficiency. The starboard maneuvering thruster remains at 98%. Multiple conduits are operating with reduced resistance. It appears the cubs' presence has had a lasting positive effect on ship systems. The smallest cub toppled over sideways, already asleep before it hit the deck. The middle one followed moments later, curling into a tight ball. The largest one looked at Lily with drowsy eyes, chirped once, very softly, and then collapsed across her feet. Well, Lily said, looking down at the 3 unconscious apex predators, now using her as furniture. That's one way to end a crisis. Captain Tylon appeared in the reactor room doorway, looking like he'd aged 5 rotations in the past hour. He surveyed the scene, the purring cubs, the stable reactor, Lily standing among the chaos like she'd always been meant to manage caffeinated predators and impossible engineering solutions. "Lieutenant," he said finally, "I've been commanding vessels for 20 rotations. I've survived hostile encounters, navigational disasters, and once had to evacuate an entire ship using only the emergency pods. This is the first time I've ever won a confrontation because someone accidentally gave coffee to endangered wildlife. To be fair, Captain, I didn't give it to them. They stole it. Somehow that makes it worse." But he was smiling, just slightly. "The medical transport crew wants to offer a reward. Substantial one, apparently. They're extremely grateful to be alive." Lily looked down at the sleeping cubs, then at her coffee maker, still sitting on the console where she'd carefully placed it before everything went sideways. "Tell them I'll take premium coffee beans, 6-month supply, the really good stuff from the agricultural colonies." Tylon raised an eyebrow. "That's all you want? They're talking about enough credits to buy a new ship." "Captain, I just spent an hour channeling caffeinated predator cubs through our reactor to save 63 people while fighting off pirates. I think I've earned the right to some quality coffee." "Fair enough." He turned to leave, then paused. "Archon, update the ship's log. Note that Lieutenant Lilly successfully implemented an entirely theoretical power enhancement system using unconventional biological components, resulting in successful mission completion with 0 casualties." "Logged, Captain. Should I also note that this was the result of theft, chaos, and what could generously be described as controlled desperation?" "No. Some things are better left as mysteries for future historians to puzzle over." 3 days later, Lily sat in the galley at Oro 600 hours, her coffee maker humming its familiar song. The beans were the good ones now, rich, complex, absolutely perfect. She'd modified the machine slightly, added a locking mechanism that would have made a bank vault jealous, and installed proximity sensors that would alert her if anything small and furry came within 2 meters. The coffee finished brewing. She lifted the mug, inhaled the aroma, and finally took that first perfect sip. Something warm and furry brushed against her ankle. Lily looked down. 3 Nithal cubs sat around her feet, watching her coffee with longing but making no move to steal it. They'd learned that lesson, apparently. Pipnash had been working with them, establishing boundaries, and Lily had contributed by creating special treats, decaffeinated, nutritionally appropriate, and most importantly, not coffee. The cubs chirped softly, and one of them offered Lily what appeared to be a small mechanical component that it had found somewhere in the ship. "Is that a power coupling?" Lily examined the piece. "Where did you even find this? We've been missing this for weeks." The cub chirped again, proudly. Captain Tylon entered the galley, stopped, and stared at the scene. "Lieutenant, are those cubs living in the engineering section now?" "They visit," Lily said defensively. "Occasionally, when they're not with Pipnash." "They've imprinted on you. Pipnash told me. Something about you being their coffee deity." "I'm not a deity. I'm just someone who appreciates good coffee and accidentally saved their lives by letting them help save other people's lives." "Archon," the captain said wearily, "please log that our chief engineer has adopted 3 apex predators." "Actually, Captain," Archon replied with unmistakable amusement, "according to my observations, they adopted her. The distinction is important." The smallest cub climbed into Lily's lap, careful not to disturb her coffee. The other 2 curled around her feet, purring contentedly. They were calm now, well-rested, properly fed on appropriate food, and apparently convinced that the reactor room was the best spot on the entire ship. Lily sipped her coffee, felt the warmth spread through her system, and looked down at the three predators who'd accidentally become family. "You know," she said quietly, "I'm never going to live this down, am I?" The cubs purred in unison. "Probably not," Captain Tylon agreed, pouring himself some coffee. "But on the bright side, we're running more efficiently than we have in months. You've got a lifetime supply of excellent coffee. And we saved 63 lives. I'd call that a good week." Lily smiled, scratched the smallest cub behind its ears, and raised her coffee mug in a small salute. To chaos, caffeine, and the universe's weird sense of humor. To impossible solutions, Tylon added. The cubs chirped their agreement, and somewhere in the ship's systems, Archon logged the moment with a note that read simply, "Family. Unconventional, but functional." The Meridian's Edge continued its journey through space, running smoother than it had in rotations, powered by steady engines and the lingering effect of three caffeinated apex predators who'd accidentally discovered they loved coffee almost as much as they loved the engineer who'd provided it. It was, Lily reflected, absolutely not what she'd signed up for. But somehow, it was exactly what she needed.